Have you noticed that this show doesn't have any commercials? I'm not selling you diapers or vitamins or smoothies or gasoline. That's because I don't want any corporate sponsors telling me what I can investigate or what I can say. Instead, you are our sponsors. This is a production by our nonprofit, the Informed Consent Action Network. So if you want more investigations, if you want landmark legal wins, if you want hard-hitting news, if you want the truth, go to icandecide.org and donate now. All right, everyone, we ready?
Yeah! Let's do this.
Action.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's time to step out onto the high wire. It is Thursday, June 4th. I am your host, Jeffery Jaxen, sitting in for Del Bigtree, who is not in the state. He's not even in the country. He is touring Europe right now with an Inconvenient Study. This is the documentary that is sweeping the world, and he's now going overseas. He is in Poland, he is in France, he is going all over the place, he's even going to Japan. So if you're in any of those countries right now, you definitely want to go check him out. Basically, you can follow his socials. This documentary film has been one of the most watched films with about, I think, 120 million views globally, 100,000 plus downloads. You could say it's going viral. It's one of the most important documentary films of the current time when it comes to research and it comes to the medical space. It tells an amazing story about the vaccine schedule that I think everyone should know when it comes to the vaccinated versus unvaccinated study, with some hidden camera footage that is something that is really shocking a lot of people. If you haven't seen it, please go to aninconvenientstudy.com. You can watch it for free there or share it with your family and friends. So I want to go now to, that's the website right there. I want to go now to what's happening really back here in America. We had something that, it was really shocking because it felt like it was something that should have happened during the middle of COVID. What am I talking about? Well, this is the FDA's VRBPAC committee. That committee is an independent committee, just like ACIP. A lot of these committee members were the ones during COVID as well. They have tenures, they come and go every 4 years. In fact, the only person that got kicked off there was Paul Offit. But besides Paul Offit, they just had a vote recently. And this vote sounded like it came from the COVID era. Remember the rubber stamping without really any scientific evidence that we saw from this VRBPAC committee, the FDA? You want to give the COVID shot to kids? Go for it. You want to give them to infants? Why not? Let's see what happens. We need to give the shots before we really understand their safety profiles. That's what we were told. Phase 4 testing on the public. Well, this is Reuters. This is an exclusive out of Reuters. Check out this headline. FDA advisors recommend COVID vaccines be updated to target current dominant variant. Updated, I thought we were supposed to pull these from the market. I thought we were supposed to suspend the license. Not at the FDA, it's business as usual. Let's go into this article and check out the voting. Check out what they said here. They said basically the U.S. FDA advisory panel recommended on Thursday, this was last week, that COVID-19 vaccines for 2026-2027 immunization should be updated to target the dominant XFG variant. So it goes on to say 8 out of the 9 panel members voted in favor of the recommendation, while 1 abstained. But listen to this quote here. This is in Reuters, and it talks about a woman named Anna Durbin. She says, quote, "We can't make a recommendation if we don't have the data, huh? And that's one of my great concerns." That's our great concern too. Anna Durbin, professor of Johns Hopkins. And so they don't have the data? This thing's been out for years, and that's how they voted during COVID. We don't have the data, and they're still doing this. This is a major problem. In fact, Senator Ron Johnson speaks on that. We're going to show you in just a little bit. He had an actual conference in D.C., a scientific inquiry about the science, the actual science, showing the harms, some of the harms that this vaccine could possibly do. But luckily, we had one of our own, attorney Aaron Siri. He gave that VRBPAC committee something to chew on. Take a look.
Good afternoon. My name is Aaron Siri, and for any conflicts, see SiriLLP.com or AaronSiriOfficial.com. If you're interested in making an evidence-based and not belief-based decision regarding COVID-19 vaccines, please review the data and evidence in the letter we submitted to this committee. Don't ignore the tens of thousands of individuals that have contacted just our law firm regarding serious injuries from COVID-19 vaccine. Don't ignore the over 40,000 individuals seriously injured from these products that are members of just one group, React 19. Don't ignore the fact CDC fought us in court for over 2 years to hide from the public the data which showed that over 7% of the 10 million V-Safe users reported needing medical care after a COVID-19 vaccine, on average 2 to 3 times each, with over 70% of those medical encounters resulting in hospitalization, emergency room, or urgent care. Don't ignore the fact FDA fought for years to hide the data, which has been just recently released, showing that when FDA properly conducted empirical Bayesian analysis internally, it resulted in incredible safety signals that were hidden from the public. Don't ignore the fact that in the clinical trial for Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine, there were 21 deaths in the vaccinated group and 17 deaths in the placebo group, meaning more in the vaccinated group, during the same period of time. And I note the placebo group actually had slightly more people than the vaccinated group. Don't forget that those seriously injured by these products have been abandoned because pharma has been given complete immunity for their injuries under the PrEP Act, and the CICP has almost no funding to pay claims and is designed to deny compensation. To call the CICP a perverse mockery of justice and betrayal would be far too kind. 5 years after assuring the world these products are safe, they still need PrEP Act immunity for the harms they supposedly won't cause. Until this immunity is lifted and the harms actually accounted for, this committee should decline to recommend any further COVID-19 vaccines. But given the prior statements made by some members of this committee about these products, statements reflecting belief and not evidence-based views about them, it will no doubt be hard to objectively consider the data and evidence regarding these products. But please try. Thank you.
Massive. Aaron perfectly articulated what I think a lot of the public feels when it comes to this FDA decision, this rubber stamp. And like he always does, blunt, accurate, and effective. Aaron continued this tear with the Department of Justice. We go to Bloomberg Law with this recent decision. Department of Justice chills chances that justices weigh worker vaccine mandates. This article says the U.S. Supreme Court has less incentive to hear a case asking whether a now repealed New York vaccine mandate caused healthcare employers to violate federal requirements for faith-based accommodations after the Justice Department discouraged review. Aaron weighed in on this on X with this post that had over 2.2 million views. He says the @real Donald Trump administration just filed a brief in the U.S. Supreme Court betraying religious liberty by arguing it is perfectly fine for employers to have policies that allow medical but not religious exemptions to vaccination requirements. He goes on to elaborate on that with another post. And I want to bring in Aaron Siri right now to talk about this because this is such a hot button topic. Everybody is asking about this conversation. And Aaron, thank you for joining me. Before we start, I want you to talk about that VRPAC committee a little more. I mean, you said everything you needed to say, but where are we? What are we doing here?
Well, I only had 3 minutes, so trust me. There's a lot more to say, but that's what I got to say in 3 minutes. Where are we? We are, I think, in large part where I said we are. We're in a place where, despite claiming, promising, assuring that these products are safe for 5 years, they still need immunity. Think about that. So which one is it? Are they safe or are they not safe? Their actions do not match their words. I'll trust their actions over their words. The fact that they won't lift the PrEP Act immunity 5 years after claiming these are safe repeatedly, I think tells you everything you need to know about how safe these products actually are. So that's where we are on that piece of it. Those who've already been injured, at least 40,000 in just React 19, the countless others. Senator Johnson's hearing reflects a whole nother slew of folks who've been injured by these products. They're just abandoned, thrown to the side. I mean, I'll just stop there. and and they wonder why there's vaccine hesitancy. They like to blame, these quote unquote anti-vax groups are so effective. No, abandoning tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands, potentially a lot more than that, of people seriously injured by a product you assure them is safe. That's what creates vaccine hesitancy. So they're creating vaccine hesitancy. They're abandoning American citizens that have been seriously injured. They're not being honest about the safety of these products. That's where we are, I guess. Not a good place.
No,
but wait, hopeful note. Hopeful note is this, Jeffrey. Sorry, and it's this: people are not dumb.
Right.
They've woken up, and that's why pretty much nobody is taking this product anymore.
No, and that idea of liability immunity and the idea of not helping out the people injured, making what Kennedy called the ultimate sacrifice during COVID to take this shot and trust the government. That's not going away, and it's going to bite people. It already is biting people in the butt during the midterms, and it might be one of the most important presidential conversations for the 2028 election. Now, I want to go to this Department of Justice move. So just to give people a little bit of background, and I know you're going to expand on this a little bit. In New York, 2021, sure, they amended the public health law, Title 10, Section 2.61. We have it here. And anybody basically in a healthcare industry that you can see covered entities, it says, shall continuously require personnel to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. And the exemptions, well, you can see right here, is just a medical exemption, a very narrow one, I may add, nothing about religious exemptions. So this case was from New York healthcare workers that were essentially fired because they did not get their religious exemptions honored. And this was the case that the Department of Justice, from my understanding, is saying, you know what, Supreme Court, you don't want to take that up. That's not a good case. Don't worry about religious exemptions. Could you expand on this a little more and talk about how this works? Because this is the brief right here that was submitted by the Department of Justice from the Trump administration.
Sure. So just to step back for 1 second, okay? Basically what New York State did, and we had countless healthcare workers contact us who were fired. They said for healthcare workers, you don't need to have a religious exemption. You don't get the COVID vaccine, you're fired. Done. Medical exemption will provide you. So meaning they'll allow a secular exemption, though they pretty much won't give you a medical exemption either. But we won't allow you to have an exemption for religious reasons. Now that is directly conflicts with Title VII federal law, period. End of story. It's clear as day to anybody who's actually honest or caring in any way about religious freedom. The New York Appellate Court, the Second Circuit, which is the federal court that sits on top of New York, it ruled that New York State was legal and proper in what they did. It was okay for them to not afford a religious exemption, even though they had a medical exemption. The healthcare workers who were fired en masse under this ridiculous law and approach by New York State appealed to the Supreme Court, okay? Now, the Trump administration could have just stayed out of it. Mm-hmm. The U.S. Supreme Court did ask them if they would like to weigh in, and they could have not done so. They could have declined to do anything. Instead, the Department of Justice specifically chose to file a brief into that U.S. Supreme Court case and say, you know what? You should decline. You should decline the Supreme Court to take this case, which would have the effect of leaving the Second Circuit decision as good law, leaving as good law on the books that you can have a medical exemption but no religious exemption. It is totally fine to just fire all those healthcare workers that refuse the COVID-19 vaccine. That is the actual effect of what the Department of Justice did. They wrote an 18-page amici brief in which it's just, gobbledygook. And I know a lot of people are tweeting and posting about it because they read it and they're like, well, isn't the Department of Justice actually saying you should have a religious exemption? Again, judge people by their actions, not their words. That brief as it stands, the purpose is to let the Second Circuit law stand as good law. The Department of Justice should have come in and they should have very simply said, no, you cannot have a medical exemption without a religious exemption. And in the workplace context, you can't have no religious exemption because that violates Title VII. That had taken one page. I could have written that for them in one paragraph. They should have done that. The failure to do that was a betrayal, as I wrote, by the Trump administration with regards to religious liberty. And it is doing them no favors. You mentioned the midterms, Jeffrey. Let me tell you, you said it's going to have an impact. Oh, it is. It's going to have an impact. And I think the impact it's going to have, and it's part of why I put this tweet out, I'm really hoping the White House takes notice, and I'm hoping they reform their ways very quickly, because if they don't, they are going to lose millions and millions of votes. The millions of folks out there who are impacted by vaccines, be their injury, by medical liberty and so forth, they're seeing what the Trump administration is doing on that front, and they're not happy. They saw this, if they understand what the Trump administration just did with the Supreme Court intervention is not good.
Yep.
They're seeing what they're doing, for example, and going and giving Bayer, arguing they should get immunity, not just by the way, for glyphosate, but it would have been for all herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, rodenticides, basically would have given them immunity. People they need to turn course immediately on these issues, or they're going to lose incredible amount of votes.
We've seen the Department of Justice under the Trump administration with a lot of topics. Two of them you just mentioned. It's almost schizophrenic because you see them moving, and we understand the Department of Justice is insular. It's insulated somewhat, we like to think, from politics. That's how it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a legal grounds, but I want to show an article from 2025. It's not an article, it's actually a press release from the actual Department of Justice. Justice Department addresses religious discrimination in lawsuit for former teacher denied exemption from vaccine mandate. So it goes on to say this, and we're talking about the same Justice Department. So when I read this, it says, when employees' religious principles conflict with work rules, they should not be forced to choose between practicing their religion and keeping their jobs if a reasonable accommodation can be made. That's the Assistant Attorney General Dillon of the Justice Department Civil Rights Division. And if you just lick your finger and put it to the wind as well, you're seeing almost every week, definitely every month, headlines like this. You're seeing hundreds of thousands, if not millions, lost in court cases. Here's one just recently: Northwestern Medicine to pay $325,000 for equal opportunity for religious exemption for people that got fired that didn't accommodate for them. So it seems like this brief from the DOJ is out of left field. Obviously, we can speculate here of what the heck's going on, but it's almost like they're talking out of two sides of their mouth.
There's a difference between what you say and what you do. That was a press release you read from. So that's what they say, and they're telling the public. But judge them based on what they do, and they need to start doing things, coming in on the side of religious freedom in practice as well in these cases is critically important. And it is ridiculous. I mean, our firm, which represents folks fired for COVID-19 vaccines, has gotten multi-million-dollar settlements on behalf of groups of individuals who were fired for COVID-19 vaccine because the employer refused a religious exemption. Our private firm can do it. The DOJ should be going full throttle after these bad actors, not taking the side of New York State effectively at the highest level in this country, at the U.S. Supreme Court. That is political. Everybody knows what happens to the Supreme Court has serious ramifications nationally. And what the DOJ just signaled to the country, I believe, is it's okay for you to just basically not have a religious exemption. You could fire people who are for refusing to engage in conduct that violates your religious beliefs. It's just
devastating.
Frankly, it's just shocking to me.
Yeah, absolutely devastating. Aaron, thank you, as always, for doing what you're doing. Blunt, accurate, effective. That's your style. We love you. And I want to show people where they can follow you. You can go to Siri and Glimstat. This is the website here. And you can also look at all the places to follow you, because you're not just there. You're on Instagram, you're on Facebook, you're on X, you have your own show, AaronSiriOfficial.com as well. And then also, if anybody hasn't read the book Vaccines, a Man Yet, I highly, highly recommend it, because this is actually, I've never seen a book shape the national conversation the way this has, and just kind of rip down the officialdom of what we're told the recommended schedule was compared to the science that was backing it, which was really a religion. So again, I want to thank you for joining us. If anybody wants to read about that case, you can go to Aaron Siri's Substack. He wrote a great article on it here. We talked about the Trump administration betrays religious liberty. Aaron Siri, thank you once again for joining me.
Thank you, and also, obviously, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that. Obviously, ICAN's an incredible organization, and we're so heartened to work with them and for them to support so much of the religious policy, vaccine and religious freedom policy work that we do. And that if anybody does want to get the book, they should buy it. Who's watching this? Get it from ICAN Decide. buy from that website because all the proceeds from those sales go directly as a donation to ICAN. So you get to do two great things at once. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for your work. All right, everybody. Well, that's Aaron Siri. If you've seen him for the first time, which I doubt anybody is right now, you're going to want to follow his work. And then there's someone else's work that I've been told a lot of people like, and it's time for that now. The Jaxen Report. All right, so yesterday something massive happened in Washington, D.C. from our friend Senator Ron Johnson. We live streamed it here at thehighwire.com, also on our X page, x.com, at our social media profile. And this was, to my recollection, the first time in history, in modern history, that a senator, a committee, held a scientific inquiry about the possible science of cancer being really created from an injectable vaccine. If you didn't see what that committee looked like, take a look.
Good afternoon. This hearing is called to order. Today's hearing is titled Plausible Mechanisms of COVID-19 Injections Causing Cancer and Attacks on Scientific Publications and Research. Although it may seem these are two unrelated topics, discussing them together would help explain why such a large percentage of the public remains unaware of the serious adverse events caused by the COVID mRNA injections.
I became aware in early 22 of my patients who'd been stable for years, do mainly melanoma patients. They'd had several different types of immunotherapy. And in 6 weeks, I saw 6 patients relapse with melanoma. I asked, what was the thing that was common? And the thing that was common is they'd all received a booster vaccine from their general practitioners.
Our team published a study in BMJ Public Health examining all-cause mortality data across Western countries between 2020 and 22. Our study showed that excess mortality remained elevated across 47 Western countries, totaling more than 3 million excess deaths. We asked attention for 3 major events that were non-existent before the pandemic: the COVID infection, the containment measures, and the COVID vaccines.
Last summer, I agreed to serve on an HHS committee on immunization practices, working group on COVID immunizations, and as an expert, I therefore looked into everything we know about cancer and COVID infection and COVID vaccination, and by the fall found nearly 70 papers describing more than 300 reported cancer cases from 27 countries following one or more COVID mRNA vaccine injections. The reported cancers occurred near injection sites like sarcomas or lymphomas, right at the injection site, within the head and neck region. In some reported cases, spike protein was identified within tumor tissue. There should be no spike in tumors.
Colorectal cancer was being reported by my patients, by my fellow surgeons, as presenting late, stage 4, not stage 1 or 2, and early in patients in their 20s and 30s and 40s. I noticed that they too had booster vaccines, and I list them in my report. They go from everything from the common cancers, from breast, prostate, etc., and all the way through to some really unexpected ones, including glioma, and more recently, hematological malignancies. At least a dozen mechanisms where messenger RNA can insert into the DNA and activate oncogenes, and more importantly, and especially the long term, they can suppress the suppressor networks, which means if a cancer is starting to evolve, it would normally be maintained, controlled, and this mechanism is being prevented.
Millions of Americans and millions more across the world may be in clear and present danger of suffering premature cardiovascular disease and cancer.
If we want to restore public trust, we must once again protect academic freedom and the right of scientists and doctors to question prevailing assumptions without fear of professional destruction.
The American people deserve transparent, rigorous science. Protecting scientific integrity is not just about my work, but it is about securing the future of medicine for all.
Myself and others feel that there is no way you can control this technology, and its use for future vaccines should be banned, and the COVID ones stopped now.
All right, so let's break down the gravity of that, what we just watched. If you watch the whole thing, it's even more expansive. A vaccine can basically shut down the immune system's response to oncogenes, to cancer proliferation. You have a radar system in your body, in your immune system. The natural expression of your immune system keeps these cancers at bay. Something is shutting that down, and it happened during and after COVID. And these researchers are also expressing that there's a scientific body out there and their own practices and experience, and they've all experienced suppression. Who's suppressing this? Why isn't every media organization in the country packing that room to find answers right now? Everybody out there, sadly, has probably been experienced either a family member or a friend or someone in their community with these type of cancers. This is an epidemic. This is the most explosive story of our time right now. And thank you, Ron Johnson. And if you didn't know about this hearing, please go back and watch it. And if you want to know about future hearings that are coming up, go text to this website, this number, 72022, text sign up, and we will alert you when these come. We will alert you with the website. You can watch them. And that is how you stay on top of these things, because it's the information that's going to be provided that is really going to be saving lives at this point. We've got to get this information out. So I want to shift back to the Trump administration. We were talking about it. We were kind of maybe beating up that decision a little bit, Aaron Siri and I, with the Department of Justice with the religious exemptions. But I'm calling it a spade here because they just did something really good. There's an executive order by President Trump that just happened. This is it right here. Realigning United States core childhood vaccine recommendations with best practices from peer and developed countries. Let's go into this. It says the CDC and the ACIP, that's the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practice, shall review the scientific assessment and the latest clinical data, and to the extent permitted by law, take any appropriate steps to update the U.S. childhood and adolescent vaccine schedule. It goes on to say this, though. Each executive department and agency shall ensure all actions, regulations, funding, and coverage. But here's the most important part of this paragraph. It goes on, it says, including fulfilling all legal obligations with respect to parental authority, religious freedom, disability accommodations, and equal protection under law. That's the President Trump that people elected. That's the Secretary Kennedy that people also installed into HHS. This is them speaking like they were elected to speak and putting executive orders that will effectively change the childhood schedule. What happened? Where were they for the last 6 months? We were told that they were sleeping at the wheel. You can't talk about vaccines. You're not supposed to talk about that really bad word. What happened there? Well, on this executive order, why this is going to change things. In fact, Robert Malone, former co-chair who just stepped down from ACIP, he put out a Substack article, and he said this: the executive order that may change the vaccine debate forever. Trump moves to break the public health monopoly. And in there, he describes that this executive order, to the extent permitted by law, that single sentence right there, brings the authority of vaccination and the medicine and science and research around that back under the executive branch, under the CDC, the FDA, and it puts the ACIP committee, an independent committee, back in its corner where they can advise, but they cannot be rulemaking and policymaking like they have been for decades. They don't get the final word. This executive order tells them exactly that. So the next ACIP committee will be very interesting to see what happens here if they're just going to be taking talking points and speaking on things but not making policy. So let's go back to the Trump administration and really HHS and Secretary Kennedy. Because if you've been reading the mainstream media, you've been told that vaccines are a bad word. You've been told that the idea that this administration would even talk about them would be disastrous for the midterms. So everybody should shut their mouth. Where did that come from? Didn't come from people like us, didn't come from people like Aaron Siri. It came from a singular poll, a poll from Fabrizio. This is the poll right here. And this was in 2025, December, so right at the end of the year there. And it says this: they looked at 1,000 people in really key districts across the United States. In the districts that will decide the control of the House of Representatives next year, Republican and Democrat candidates who support eliminating longstanding vaccine requirements will pay a price in the election. Vaccine skepticism is bad politics. Well, that's strange because that didn't seem like the temperature of the country until we read that poll. But after that poll happened, all the mainstream media picked up on that to drive it in people's faces and to beat down Kennedy and the idea of talking about vaccines. Here's the New York Times. Kennedy's vaccine agenda hits roadblock, diminishes his clout. It's all over for Kennedy, according to the New York Times. He says polls now show that Mr. Kennedy's vaccine agenda is a dud, unpopular even with Republicans. And that has created discomfort inside the White House, which has made clear its desire for Mr. Kennedy to downplay talk of vaccines while emphasizing his more popular health-eating agenda. So basically, shut up, buddy. Just do your job and talk about food. We don't want to talk about vaccines because a poll of just 1,000 people says so. It goes on to say this. This is New York Times again. They're not going to miss their opportunity to quote this poll. Our poll highlights strong bipartisan support for routine childhood vaccines in the nation's most comprehensive House districts, with majorities across political affiliations acknowledging their benefits and safety. My God, this is like written by the ACIP committee of 2020 or something, or the FDA committee that rubber stamps COVID shots. It's safe and effective. Don't talk about it. It might hurt your ability to be elected. Well, something just happened recently, and it appears that the Trump administration and the executive branch was bamboozled. They were tricked. An operation was run on them. What am I talking about? Well, the rest of the polling results have now been discovered from the same company. This is the Daily Caller exclusive. Trump's pollsters found voters were highly concerned about vaccines. The poll never saw daylight. It says an unreleased poll appears to undermine the White House's stated rationale for pivoting away from policies that inflame pharmaceutical companies. We can't have that. The Daily Caller News Foundation obtained a secret poll conducted in October 2025 by President Trump's longtime pollster, Tony Fabrizio, finding that 73% of voters expressed concern about childhood vaccine mandates, while a whopping 90% of voters expressed concern about pharmaceutical industry's corrupting influence. The secret Fabrizio poll, which has not been previously reported, tells a different story. It shows voters' top health concern is the drug lobby's influence on public policy, on medical research, and on news coverage. Not here. And that nearly 7 in 10 voters want more research on vaccines' cumulative effect on infants or in infants. Let's go to what was not shown to Trump, what was not shown to his administration, and what was not shown to the American public. These are the results of the poll that they don't want you to see. Up there, pharmaceutical influence. You have basically 90% of people, if you add up all the green, are very concerned or somewhat concerned of the influence of pharmaceutical companies over government, politics, news, all of it. And then if you go to the next picture, you have 73% of people, again, they want the childhood vaccine requirements changed. Those are a concern for them. The current requirements are 73% of Americans. That's a concern. But maybe the biggest poll, and this echoes what Siri told the VRBPAC committee, this is vaccine manufacturer blanket immunity. I don't care what manufacturers have to say. Talk to me when this thing is lifted, and then we'll have a conversation. Until then, you can't be trusted. And if you average that across there, that's about 70% of people across all political spectrums want this vaccine manufacturer immunity lifted. If their products are so good, they don't need protection. And that is the poll that really no one saw, and that appears to be the poll that really kept HHS on the sidelines for the last 6 months when it came to the vaccine conversation. And I'm guessing that Trump and his administration saw these polls and realized they screwed up and pushed this executive order forward to keep going. Because remember, the ACIP committee has been stayed by a Massachusetts judge, so everything's on ice. This executive order pushes through that roadblock. So it'll be very exciting to see what moves forward. It should hopefully be business as usual moving forward on this vaccine agenda like we saw when Kennedy first got in. Now, I want to talk about last week we have Ken Paxton. He's the Attorney General of Texas. He won the Republican primary runoff for the U.S. Senate. A massive move for him, but he's still Attorney General. He will be Attorney General until the end of January of this year. and he's still going to work as Attorney General. This is a press release from his office just recently. Attorney General Paxton takes legal action as part of sweeping investigation into corporate giants, including Bayer, for poisoning Texans through glyphosate contamination in food. This is the Attorney General stepping up where the Supreme Court and the Trump administration is now really dropping the ball. So let's go into this. What is he doing? What is he talking about? Well, if you're in Texas, you're in luck. He says, although the EPA prohibits the use of glyphosate as a desiccant on oats, which means when the oats are cut, they spray glyphosate on it so they dry faster. So you get a massive, massive amount of chemicals. It says in the United States, major food companies source their oats from foreign countries where the practice is allowed. So they skirt that. They found a loophole. Oats are widely found in cereals, breakfast bars, and cookies, which make children particularly vulnerable to glyphosate harms. Paxton says this, quote, if any corporation is using regulatory loopholes to poison our children, poison our kids with glyphosate, we will find out and we will secure justice. My office is also investigating whether major food companies are complying with Texas law and whether consumers, especially parents, have been misled about the health claims of common food products marketed to their families. No corporation is above the law and no legal action will go unpunished. Ken Paxton, ladies and gentlemen. And we can see similar things happening in other states. Why isn't every attorney general doing this? Well, they could. They're not. Hopefully they will. But we have Surgeon General Joe Ladapo in Florida. He's doing his work there with Ron DeSantis to at least inform the public. This was his initiative to look at the glyphosate levels in bread and basically give that to the public so they can make the right decisions for their children and they can vote with their dollars and put out really, hurt the market share of people that won't take this glyphosate out of the food. Why is it important for children? Well, we know that MAHA is focused on the chronic disease, especially in children. But when it comes to glyphosate and crop chemicals in general, there's a 2025 study here. It really breaks it down, and it looks at these chemicals in children's food. This is the study here, and I want to read this excerpt. It really puts a finer point on it. They say children are particularly vulnerable to glyphosate exposure due to several physiological and developmental factors. They go on to say there are immature detoxification systems, including underdeveloped liver and kidney function. Children are less efficient at metabolizing and excreting toxic substances like glyphosate and its metabolite. But it also says children consume more food relative to their body weight compared to adults, which increases their dietary exposure to pesticides. So across the board, children, it's this flashing red light. You have to be careful with these toxins, with these glyphosate and crop chemicals, because the kids are bioaccumulating them faster, especially the ones that can't detox or that have immature livers and issues detoxing among just the regular children. And those kids eat the cereal. I ate it when I was a kid. They're eating the oats. They're eating the cookies. This is massive glyphosate. We have a lot of organizations, independent organizations, doing the testing on this. You can go to those organizations and find out what foods to buy. But the crop chemical conversation gets even bigger because when we're talking about toxification, we go back to what Ron Johnson was talking about. Cancer is a big problem in this country, and it's not just one thing that's happening. It's a synergistic effect of a lot of environmental issues and it's probably genetic vulnerabilities that activate to these environmental issues. Iowa is a massive hotbed right now. There's a recent study that just came out, and it showed that in Iowa, you can see here that the pesticides, this is Axios, investigation ties pesticide use to cancer rates. It says Iowa has the nation's second highest cancer rate and is a heavy pesticide state, using 53 million pounds last year per Investigate Midwest. That's a big problem. And the actual good part of this story, if we can say there is a good part, is that there's activation at the political level. So we know the midterms are happening right now. They're moving in now to the 2028 elections, and our representatives and the potential representatives are responding to this. Check out this article. It says pollution and cancer are on the ballot in Iowa. Candidates of both parties, so no matter who you vote for, you're probably going to win here if you don't like chemicals. Candidates of both parties for governor and for Secretary of Agriculture have included among their campaign priorities Iowa's rising cancer incidence and the nitrate water contamination that may well be responsible. For the first time, the health and environmental damage from farming has moved from the margins to the apex of political priorities in Iowa, an agricultural colossus that is the nation's largest grain and pork producer. So people can't ignore this anymore. In fact, in order to get elected, they're going to have to answer these questions. People will not let them off the hook. They will be the minority if they don't answer these questions. Not us anymore, and not these topics. So this is an exciting piece because the politicians are following the lead of the people. So I want to talk about another crop chemical here, atrazine. It's been around much longer than glyphosate. It's being sprayed everywhere. It's been sprayed everywhere. It's banned in a lot of other countries except the United States. And something just happened at the end of 2025. We have the WHO's Cancer Research Agency, their International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC, and they basically labeled atrazine a group 2A. That means it probably causes, probably causes cancer. It's carcinogenic to humans, cancer causing in humans. Well, that's a big deal. Those were headlines. What did the EPA have to say? Because they allow it in this country. The EPA, well, they dismissed the new cancer warning on atrazine, and they echoed Syngenta's criticisms. Syngenta makes atrazine. The EPA was a mouthpiece for Syngenta. In this case, they defended it using their talking point, Syngenta. Well, unfortunately for them, we have somebody named Brent Wisner. He is, I guess, if you want to say, the Aaron Siri of crop chemical litigation against these companies. He was at the People vs. Poison rally in Washington, D.C. on the Supreme Court steps. Listen to what he had to say.
The courthouse, the courtroom, a jury, is one of the few places that you can humble the most powerful, the most controlling organizations in the world. In 2018, when we brought Monsanto into that courtroom, and we showed 12 jurors the science, the Monsanto papers, when we showed them the truth, they brought this company to its knees.
Yeah. Yeah!
That is the power of the courthouse. And today, this court is deciding whether or not those doors are shut. Because if they decide in Monsanto's favor, they are telling every single person in this country, you do not get access to justice. You do not get a right to have the truth be heard. You do not get your constitutional privilege to have a trial by jury. And what do we have? We have a democracy that's run by corporations. That is what's at stake here. And today, with us together, we have a chance to make sure our voices are heard. If we want to protect our democracy, I don't care if you're left or you're right, I don't care if you're up or you're down. If you want to protect our country, you have to make sure those courtrooms stay open. So today, let's hold them to it. Let's win! Come on!
That makes me happy to see because here's the reality. Syngenta should be shaking in their boots right now. They should be terrified because Brent Wisner, they didn't just push over the first domino, they kicked the first domino over to start the effect on glyphosate and nearly destroy Bayer as a company. They were called the worst takeover of Monsanto, the worst corporate takeover ever. It's the worst decision because of Brent Wisner and because of his work securing a legal win with Dwayne Johnson. He was a groundskeeper who he got cancer from using this product, and they ruled in his favor. He won millions, but that started off litigation across the entire country that Bayer is begging the Supreme Court to make it stop because their company is on the ropes. They've lost market share, and now Syngenta is in the mix. Syngenta's targeted. Here's the latest press release from Wisner Baum. It says, Wisner Baum investigates Syngenta amid renewed questions over atrazine safety. It says, Wisner Baum attorneys investigating potential claims say farm workers, pesticide applicators, and rural families may have been exposed for decades without adequate safety warnings. Then they quote one of the lead attorneys there. He says, what makes atrazine especially alarming is the scale and duration of exposure, Loringer said. This is not an isolated chemical confined to industrial settings. It has been detected in drinking water sources and agricultural communities across the country for decades. So unlike glyphosate, atrazine is a low-hanging fruit. It's a target-rich environment for lawyers. So if the EPA were waiting for them to reassess atrazine, hopefully they come up with a little different thing than safe and effective. But if they don't, there is an army of lawyers that is going to descend upon this company and get justice for the people that have been harmed by this. So a great move. We have Paxton, great move with Paxton, great move in Iowa. This is an exciting piece on the crop chemical time. People are going to get justice. Now, I want to talk about justice because that's something we are very, very passionate and focused about here on the High Wire and through our legal arm, ICAN. We have Aaron Siri's excellent work over the years, one of the most successful medical freedom, informed consent lawyers really of all time, in my opinion. we have our newest legal update. And we have these every week. Our lawyers never stop. Every week we have one of these to bring to you. This recent one, ICAN presses FDA to fix pharma direct-to-consumer advertising. I'm going to read this and then break it down. It says, on behalf of Informed Consent Action Network, we write to request that existing regulation that permits advertising prescription products directly to consumers, DTC advertising, be amended to require disclosure of the risks of the product in each advertisement. Other than New Zealand, the United States is reported to be the only developed country that permits DTC advertising. The American Medical Association has even called for a ban on DTC advertising because, among other reasons, it fuels escalating drug prices and inflates demands for new and more expensive drugs that are equally or even less effective than existing drugs. At the least, the FDA should require that DTC advertising for all drugs, biologics, and medical devices fairly and equally disclose all risks along with any benefits related to the product. The FDA, here's the key part. The FDA can effect this change within existing regulatory authority by amending 21 CFR subsection 202.1, titled Prescription Drug. You get the idea. So what we're doing here, a lot of people, when they first see this, they say, wait a minute, I thought Kennedy just fixed that. I thought that was over. Kennedy started that in 2021. And if you realize, the entire upper echelon of the FDA has been wiped out. They've been gone. They're gone. They've been fired. They walked away. They've been let go, whatever you want to call them. So this petition to the FDA finishes the job. It closes the loopholes that were started, finishes the job that was started in 2025 by Kennedy and by the FDA. It's asking them, it actually gives model language. It says here, you don't have to change anything. Just take this language and use it. We're doing their job for them. And it's asking them to present the benefits and the risks equally. And not just the major risks, all of the risks. So we have full informed consent. We stick to our mission statement here at the Informed Consent Action Network. And this is what you get when you donate to us. You get massive weekly legal action. We have legal action that we're behind the scenes, big things that we'll break when the time comes. Right now, we have a $1.5 million match. And what is that? Where are we at right now? We're at $300,000. I'd love to see this match get met. This is massive. And remember, we're not just a legal team. We're a synergistic, holistic team. We have a potent legal team, clearly. We have a journalistic arm. You're looking at it. And also across the pond internationally with Dell. But we also, through ICAN Legislate, inform politicians at the federal and local levels. We're a documentary film studio. Did you know that? It's an Inconvenient Study. That's a film. But there's also 5 full-length feature films sitting behind Highwire Plus that I did. One on polio, the entire story of polio, things on the climate, things that, it's basically the Jaxen Report, but for an hour, and it exhausts every topic. You can send these to family and friends. We do this here, and we do this for you, and we pride ourselves in accuracy. And this is something that I hope you become a recurring donor. All you have to do this is text 72022 to this number here, and it's going to pop up in a second, and we will get you taken care of. Please become a recurring donor. Text or donate 72022 to send a tax-deductible donation today. We'll help you out. We bring continuous results. That's what we do here. We go to great lengths to provide you with those results and make sure they're accurate. We're not just blowing smoke here. So please support us. We love you, and we love all the support you can give. If you happen to be someone who is lucky enough to have a little more money, direct phone call to us, and we can help you out. We can take care of that. We appreciate everything anybody can give. So I want to now go to another story here to bring in our next guest. But before we talk about our next guest, the conversation on data centers, if you notice, we're talking about it almost every week now. And that's because in the country, this is one of the hottest topics, and it dropped in our lap. Remember, ChatGPT dropped the first installment of ChatGPT, which is artificial intelligence, came out in 2022. Just about 6-7 months later, the pandemic was declared over by the WHO, and the public went, wait a minute. Okay, it's over. We're trying to find our bearings, but we just had data centers and artificial intelligence, society-changing artificial intelligence, get dropped in our lap. And we're trying to reel from the pandemic and the damage there to our communities and understand this I don't know what it is, trying to kind of take over the market share of society. So this is the Harvard Gazette. And this is a recent conversation article. Why are communities pushing back against data centers? It says more than 4,000 are already in operation, mostly in Virginia, Texas, and California, and 3,000 more are being planned or under construction. Well, that's a big deal because the UK, China, they're our second and third competitors, if you will. They only have about 300, 500, 600 data centers, which is still a lot, but nothing like 4,000 and 3,000 on the way. Clearly, the U.S. is ground zero here. And that is why you see headlines like this in rural countries, in rural towns. This is just from this week. Minneapolis City Council imposes 6-month halt on data centers. La Pine, this is out of Bend. La Pine rejects, Oregon, proposed data center amid public outcry. So those are a couple wins for people that don't want data centers in their backyard, but there are also some losses. You can see this push-pull. In Maine, the governor veto did not go through. Despite initial support, legislature fails to override Mill's veto of landmark data center ban. And to get a really kind of an idea, a pulse check on this, you can go to this data center moratorium map. And there's a lot of information here. You can go to each one of these, and all those colors mean there's some type of activation. The only people aren't doing anything are the gray areas. There's not a lot going on in those areas. And if you want to look at this map, which I suggest a little further, you can sign up for our newsletter. Everything I'm talking about, all the links, all the data, all the sources are here. You go to thehighwire.com, and you can sign up for this newsletter to get this every week in your mailbox every Monday. You just put in your email right there, you hit subscribe, and off you go. So that is how you do this, and you can take a look at that map. You can send that to friends and family to figure out what's going on in their state so they can activate. Because if you haven't looked at the news yet, this is what's going on. Take a look.
A controversial proposal for a new data center in Boulder City is now on hold.
A South Jersey community is sounding off after an artificial intelligence data center was built in their neighborhood.
Tons of Oregon residents pushed back Wednesday night against a proposed data center.
It's a common battle cry these days as the explosion of AI creates increasing demand for computing infrastructure.
Data center controversies are packing city hall, town hall meetings across the country.
All across the nation, when you look at everything involved with data centers, the power consumption, and especially in small towns like this, the power consumption goes way up. Water consumption goes way up.
We need clarity, and we need it now because we are not going to pay double the amount of our utility bills.
They're here to take advantage of our electricity. It's going to take advantage of all of our fresh water, Lake Erie, the Ohio River, our aquifers, our streams and rivers.
Should we be giving them billions of dollars in tax breaks?
It's costing us about $140 million a year.
Are we in an AI bubble? Of course. Right? We were in that bubble. Of course we are.
It is going to burst. I don't know when. I don't know the order of magnitude. A lot of people are going to lose money.
I'm really excited now to bring on our next guest. He's someone that I've been following for quite some time. He nails this topic, and I have a lot of questions for him. This is Ed Dowd. Edward's worked on Wall Street for most of his career. He's a former BlackRock portfolio manager, managing about $14 billion at that firm. Now he is the co-founder of Finance Technologies. Ed, thanks for joining me today.
Jeffrey, thanks for having me on again.
All right. I don't know if you saw that news montage there, but did that bring up anything for you when you saw that?
Yeah, so there's controversy over the data centers because we're in the acceleration phase. There's always been data center builds, but we're in this unprecedented infrastructure build to house AI, which needs a tremendous amount of compute and power. So we're overwhelming the country with these data centers. They produce an increase in your electricity bill locally, and they drain local water resources for cooling purposes. So it's natural that the communities around the country are up in arms about this. There is controversy, though. There are those who claim on the AI data center side that this is not organic protest, but it's China and Russia propaganda. I don't believe that because we can see with our lying eyes what's going on in these communities, and both could be true. Yeah. There could be some propaganda, but that doesn't mean it's not massively organic and people are very angry. And this is only going to get worse. But the good news is AI is, they call it artificial intelligence. What it really is, it's a large language model. Mm-hmm. It hallucinates, and they've been subsidizing the cost of it to show acceleration and growth to attract venture capital and investment. And now they're going to go and IPO their companies to get a stock valuation, and they're trying to show profits. So they raise the true cost of AI up to where it is, and companies are now revolting and finding out that they can't afford the AI, and it is actually more efficient to keep humans than to use AI. So that's where we are. We're at this very critical juncture. Part of that news montage talked about it being a bubble. Of course, it's a bubble. Bubbles in any new technology are a feature of capitalism, not a bug. We had a bubble with the railroads, we had a bubble with the internet and the telecom build out, and we have a bubble now. And bubbles bring lots of capital. They overbuild. There's a crash, that capital is wasted, but then the productivity and enhancements to our lives come way later. So, I'm not an AI neo-Luddite. I believe there will be uses, but it's classic technology hype, not ready for prime time, and the pricing of it is not working. So I think a lot of these data centers that have been announced will not actually end up getting built. That's kind of the good news on the other side of that. That doesn't mean that a community that doesn't want it shouldn't protest. They have constitutionally guaranteed rights to peacefully do anything they want. But there is not enough power to plug all these data centers that are proposed into.
Yeah,
that's the
and
other
before you go into the power aspect, I want to go back to the financial piece, because Bloomberg just recently, you talked about the bubble, and I want to ask, where are we on the bubble? Because when I'm looking across the waterfront of the news, it looks like that bubble is starting to deflate. There's a reality setting in where it's okay to talk about this now. This is Bloomberg News here. I'm going to just read this headline to you. It says, AI savings misses. And then in quotes, it says, should be making executives uncomfortable. It says the missed targets. This is Bain & Company. Bain & Company is one of the world's top management consulting firms. They said the missed targets should be making executives uncomfortable, especially since many of them are approving increased spending for artificial intelligence on the basis of expected savings. That's the consulting firm. They told Bloomberg that. So it almost appears like the secret's out. This thing is not, it's not this inflated bubble that you just put your money in and you're going to get all these massive returns. I mean, everyone from Sam Altman, these people are saying, you know what, it's kind of hard to scrape up capital nowadays.
Yeah, the private credit markets were funding a lot of this, and they're effectively shut down because we're at the part of the credit cycle where losses are coming on due to the economic cycle. So credit is becoming more expensive, and the costs to actually run this are a lot higher than had been advertised. And so now the end clients, the people that are supposed to generate all this revenue for these companies, are revolting. So the narrative has definitely shifted, but I want to caution people, a bubble ends when it ends. And that doesn't mean that the stock market is basically one driver right now. It's all AI. 45% of the stock market cap valuation is AI and AI adjacent. So just because the narrative shifting doesn't mean the bubble doesn't keep going. So I'm not giving any investment advice, but when the bubble bursts, a lot of people are going to lose a lot of money fast.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But the narrative is definitely changing.
So speaking of the capital drying up, clearly the people, the billionaires that want these out there, that want these data centers built, aren't just going to walk away and go, I think we're done. We tried that. Good try. I don't know if you saw this, but I want to show this for the viewers. This is Larry Fink. He's the head of BlackRock. He was with Greg Abbott here in Texas. Texas is a big place. The data centers are being erected. And he talked about where that funding might come from moving forward. Take a listen.
If we're going to be the leader in technology, which we are, if we are going to be the leader in AI, which we presently are, it's just going to require trillions of dollars of investments. And if we don't invest in it, China will be the global leader in this. And so to me, it's not whether, this is a must. And if you think about how that translates, it translates into a more dynamic economy. We need the United States economy to grow at over 2%. We need the U.S. economy to grow at 3%, especially with the growing deficits the federal government has. And so much of this money, not just the projects, is going to be coming from the private sector, from savings accounts, from pension accounts, from insurance companies, and on and on and on. The whole world is in need of improving the infrastructure.
So he says saving accounts, pension accounts. What do you hear when you hear that?
Well, this is interesting. He's basically telling us as if it's going to happen in the future. Right. It has already occurred. This is the thing. The private credit vehicles are primarily high net worth individuals, pension funds, and insurance companies. So those people have been already funding the AI boom. Mm-hmm. And what I'm telling you is one of the biggest drivers of the AI CapEx cycle, private credit, an incremental driver, has dried up, and it's now got problems. And that's why we saw Google this week issue $80 billion in equity, half of which is going to fund CapEx. That was very interesting for those of us in the capital markets because it suggests that the debt markets may be drying up and requiring higher rates of return on those on the debt than before. So they're going to the equity markets to raise capital, which is always a more expensive way to raise capital, unless the debt markets are more expensive. So what I'm telling you is, Larry Fink is basically telling us something that's already happened, and now we're at the the reality time and the narrative shifting. So I think we're in the beginning stages of at least the debt markets putting a pause on this funding. And the head of PIMCO, which is a ginormous fixed income firm, their chief investment officer said we're in the beginning, early stages of the credit default cycle, and it's only going to get worse from here. And he also warned investors to take a hard look at AI debt. So, the stewards of your capital are not going to just say, yes, we're going to throw money at this and lose and potentially lose money. It's already been happening. The pension funds, the insurance companies have already been funding this. Tremendous amount of capital has already been spent, and losses are going to be coming out soon. So, Larry Fink is saying something that is in the rearview mirror. I want people to understand that it's already happened.
Yeah, and you're talking about AI debt, you're talking about capital acquisition drying up to expand this artificial intelligence, this data center idea. And that's a hard reality, and they're bumping up against that. But there's also, what I'm seeing is there's also a harder reality. It's actually a physical nuts and bolts reality. I just want to rattle off a couple of headlines here just to paint this picture. This is copper. AI data center build out pushes copper towards shortages. Analysts warn. They said only 70% of the 2035 demand could be met. And then here's another one. Supply chain delays for transformers, cables, and breakers push power grid to the brink. They said there's 2 new Silicon Valley data centers. They've been built, but they can't begin processing information. The equipment that would supply them with electricity isn't available. And they go on to say that the orders, the lead time for the orders have now hit like a record of up to 2 years, and some of the larger transformers up to 4 years. So there's massive delays. And this isn't even accounting for what's going on with the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, there's a lot of analytical, on-the-ground things that are accounting for just the nuts and bolts of this, where these things can't be built and fully operational.
Correct. And so someone put out a comment that the cost to build a data center is way higher than it was 2 years ago because of these shortages, because of the Strait of Hormuz issues. So and inflation recently. So that's a gating factor. And just, Jeffrey, just so you know, we just don't even have enough power built to plug these into. And this gentleman, Ed Zitron, who went on Bloomberg News yesterday to decry the AI bubble, has looked into how many of these data centers have been started and are complete, and it's a far cry from reality. So I suspect that given the high cost of the real costs going in, it's going to pause everything because you can't build something with shortages and costs like this.
You speak about like the building of that, and we can't even plug them in. So last year, MIT Technology Review had an article. It's about a year ago it ran, and it was on China. And I know you speak a lot about China. Perhaps you can give us a window in here. This is the headline, and I'll let you run on it. But this is from last year. It says China built hundreds of AI data centers to catch the AI boom. Now many stand unused. So they're talking about they're just now. I'm reading that and I'm thinking, am I being tricked here? Is this some kind of international game that they're trying to like win the war of AI data centers, or is that actually happening?
Well, the most recent stats I saw is that the U.S. is way ahead of China in building data centers. But that may be because China's made a different tactical decision. Their AI model is DeepSeek and other models, and they've open sourced them. And I think they're going more towards a decentralized AI, where we're going for big centralized AI. So it's two different strategies. And there are people out there that say that these AI large language models, the 4 or 5 that exist, are all commodities, and the switching costs are near zero. You add in a layer of open source AI models that aren't as good as the frontier models, but they're 3-4 months behind, and it's good enough to do 90% of all tasks at 90% of the cost. That is also a risk to all this infrastructure build. Is that you're going to be priced out of the equation by lower open source models. So it's very interesting what's going on. And China has its own issues and economic woes. I won't get into those here, but they probably built some of those data centers last year just to keep people employed. But they're not anywhere close to the number of data centers we've built so far.
Do they represent a threat to the United States in the space of the data center, or even as a financial empire at this point?
In the AI game, they represent a threat because they're giving it away for free. And what does China do? They're the factory of the world. They build a scale and then undercut everyone's production prices. So their model is to give away AI open source and hope that people adopt it, unless there are curbs here in the U.S. that don't allow that.
Now, this top-down approach, clearly from the United States, you have Trump signing several executive orders to pave the way for these data centers to more easily be put in communities. What I'm seeing is headlines like this from Wired, and this is very concerning because people are rightfully protesting these and going to town meetings. U.S. law enforcement warns of anti-tech extremism as AI hatred grows. And in this article, people can read this, but they have more than 1,000 pages of unpublished reports from the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and the fusion centers that were started during 9/11 for terrorists. Now they're turning domestically for this AI conversation. And you can go in here, some of the quotes. It says across the country, town halls and budget committee meetings have been among the chief forums for local residents to express their dissent with data centers being built in their neighborhoods. But apparently there's this broad category that DHS is calling an emerging threat in these people. As an American, how do we make those two things make sense?
Yeah, so unfortunately, look, let's take out the administrations. We had Biden, now we have Trump. If you forget who's in charge, we have a bureaucratic institution. And under Biden, they called out people that went to church and protested abortion as extremists. And now we have them looking at the AI is important to the country, and this bureaucratic institution is probably taking their power a little too far and calling anybody who protests a threat. Now, yes, you could be a threat, you could do violence, but most people are not. So it would be better off if we didn't have an agency already calling people who are using their constitutional rights, threats. And look, if Biden was in charge right now, all of the right wing and MAGA people would be decrying it. Just because Trump's in charge, they're pretty silent. I'm agnostic when it comes to constitutional rights. I don't care what side of the equation. If you violate them, I'm against it. I'm against vaccine mandates. I'm certainly against targeting people who want to use their constitutional rights to locally, fight back something that they don't want.
Exactly. And I guess one final question is we look at these companies like Meta, like Google. These are the companies that, Americans have a really good memory, but you don't need one because just a couple of years ago, they were censoring the heck out of us during COVID, censoring actual vaccine injuries. These are the companies that are building these massive AI models and getting these handouts from government. So can we trust them fully to lead industry at this point and be the industrial leaders like the early 19th century with the Industrial Revolution?
In my opinion, no. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg failed. He caused a lot of the censorship, and the censorship killed, in my humble opinion. I've said this publicly on X and elsewhere. Censorship kills, and the truth about the COVID vaccines is slowly coming out. Jeffrey, you and I and your audience knows the score on that one. And they censored us. YouTube censored us. The CEO who died of cancer of YouTube basically said she was proud she took down 1 million videos about COVID. And that was mostly the truth. And now we're going to hand over the keys of this most important infrastructure and build out to these same people. I don't think so, and I don't trust them as far as you can kick them.
All right, Ed, thanks for joining me today. You're an incredible financial mind, but more importantly, you're a voice for reality and for common sense. And I think a lot of people should really follow you. Where can they follow you at and follow your work and also what you do?
Yeah, 3 places. I have a personal website, eddowd.com, where I offer consulting services. I have financial research from my firm at financetechnologies.com with a PH. And I also have an X. You can follow me on X at Dowd Edward on X, and it's DOWD Edward.
All right, Ed, keep up the good work. We'll see you soon. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
All right. All right, I want to talk about some exciting promos we have. We talked about what we did with ICAN's legal work, with donations to our journalism, to the efforts we do there, but we also have some awesome merchandise. And we have a new line of merchandise coming out for the 250th anniversary of America. Take a look at this.
Good evening! Is that the zip one too? Yeah,
We asked and you delivered, showing us how you high-wire.
This is how we high-wire. This is how we high-wire.
Team High-Wire is being repped from all over the world.
Sporting our new high-wire gear in the free state of Florida.
When I wear this cap, it makes me feel proud.
I am a doula and a childbirth educator, and I love wearing my Get Vaccinated t-shirt.
Sometimes it's not just what you wear, it's who you meet while wearing it.
When I was wearing this shirt yesterday, a tourist came up to me and said, "Love that shirt."
Since 2020, when I woke up from the Matrix, I've been talking to neighbors, connecting with local groups.
There are a lot of people that are a little bit hesitant about approaching the topic of vaccination, and wearing this shirt allows them to approach me, and I know exactly where to send them.
Whether you're dropping the kids at school or marching in rallies across the globe, we see your dedication, we feel your support. We want to see millions of truth tellers showing the world how they high-wire. Head to thehighwire.shop to support our mission and stock up on gear for the whole family.
Thank you so much. Keep it up.
Thank you for spreading truth. We love you guys. Thanks for what you do.
All right, so go back up for a second. We have an exclusive new collection here. We have 1 month before the 4th of July, essentially, exactly. and you can get this, be on those beaches with that hat, Amer ICAN. Get it? Then we even have towels, so I want to see everyone on the beach with their American ICAN towel. That's going to represent us. Show your colors, support us, support what we do. This is what we believe in, and you want to be a part of this, you can go to the store and check it out. Now, I want to bring on our next guest. Before I do that, I want to talk about a conversation of raw milk, because this has been a conversation in America. It's been really woven into the fabric of America for decades. Farmers serving their communities with raw milk. They're not going through big packagers for pasteurization. And in fact, Oklahoma is getting the idea because they just passed a law. New Oklahoma law expands raw milk sales. It's raising the monthly sales cap to 1,500 gallons of raw milk per month. This is big. This. You can see the state level battles are going, and even community level battles at this point. And I want to bring in someone who's been a voice for this very topic for some time now. In fact, he has lived experience because he actually healed himself with raw milk in these products. This is Max Kane, and this is his story. Take a look.
I was just 10 years old, and when out of the blue, I started experiencing just this terrible burning sensation in my upper abdomen. They found the inside of my GI tract was totally ulcerated. They diagnosed me with degenerative Crohn's disease. There was no cure to it, no known cause, and that I could expect to die somewhere in my mid-30s. They put me on 3 different medications immediately. And over the course of 10 years, I was in and out of the hospital several times, and the medications never really fully helped. I was in my mid-20s. I was very close to death, and I immediately saw how I wasn't taking action toward my own health, and that was the turning point in my life. I started attending lectures and seminars. I read this book that talked about making raw kefir that could help with Crohn's disease. The first time I drank kefir in the kitchen, there was no pain. And so right away I thought, wow, there's something here. And I started feeling better. It was less than a year I met this nutritionist who started coaching me on not only consuming raw dairy products, but eating an all raw food diet. I've been asymptomatic and off medication for about 17 years now. My health means everything to me. It's hard to find meaning in life without health. And so the meaning I found in my life now is I'm on a mission to help people make healthy decisions for their life.
All right, I'm going to bring on Max Kane now. Max, it's good to talk to you. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. How you doing?
I'm having a great day. Thanks for running that. It's good to see some of those old pictures. Having a great day, Jeffrey. And before we get going, I wanted to just get into, you were talking about the high wire merch. I'm going to be decked out in high wire merch at this event that's coming up in New York. And for anyone that's going to attend, they're going to get some autographed shirts by Dell who will be there. So just want to make sure that got mentioned before we get into it.
Cool. All right, cool. And I want to ask, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I want to ask you about kind of the current state of raw milk in America. I know you talked to RFK Jr. He's been out there speaking, it seems like every chance he gets, he's a proponent of raw milk. He loves it, he drinks it. But what's going on across the country right now? Could you give us a pulse check on that?
Yeah, across the country right now, the federal government has relaxed a little bit. Raw milk is really more of a state issue, but at the same time, the federal government has the ability to regulate interstate trafficking of raw milk, which is really big because a lot of the Amish in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, they like to ship milk over state lines. I was actually sitting down with RFK and my U.S. Congressman Derek Van Orden together at a round table just a couple days ago on Monday up in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And there was a fair amount of people in the room, and both RFK and Derek, my congressman, had mentioned, they're in favor of raw milk. Bobby even said that he drinks it every week in Washington, D.C., and that he has to buy it for pet consumption. So the federal administration is definitely in favor of raw milk. Unfortunately, not all the states are. And so raw milk is regulated by the states, and some of the states like Wyoming, for example, you can buy raw milk, totally legal, unregulated. Where I live in Wisconsin, you're still a criminal if you go buy raw milk from your local farmer.
This is crazy times. I mean, every time I hear this topic, it's like, it's milk. It's milk. Figure it out and go after actual criminals, not farmers, not people trying to heal themselves. And you have, just speaking of that, bringing communities together, you have farmmatch.com. Anybody can go to this, they type in their zip code, and you can actually find and connect with your local farmers if you want to get hooked up with this. This is a great way not only to figure that out, but to build community. This is a brilliant idea.
Yeah, thank you. We just actually hit a milestone with FarmMatch. This past month, we just broke $100 million in sales, in raw milk sales. So this movement, it's growing. I'm really proud to say that over 93% of all that money went to small local farmers who produce raw milk. So right now we have a $2.5 trillion food economy every year in the United States. So if we can take some of that money that's being directed to big agriculture and pretty much the four companies that control the food system and redirect it to the small local farms who are looking out for us, man, what a better country we would have, and what healthier communities we'd have as well. So.
Absolutely. And I mean, just simple outside the box ideas like Farm Match. I mean, you're talking, like you said, millions of dollars being shifted to local farmers, to this idea. This cements in an ideology and a movement in America that's well on its way. Speaking of movements, Hudson, New York, coming up at the end of this month, Churchtown Dairy. There's an event. Tell me about this event. This is Abby Rockefeller's farm in Hudson, New York. This looks like it's going to be a great event. Tell me a little bit about this.
Yeah, well, first I want to give a huge shout out to Abby Rockefeller. It's so awesome that she built this raw milk dairy in Hudson, New York. which is almost like this activist farm, right? So she's got this amazing round barn. The ceilings are about 40 feet tall. And in the wintertime, the cows are in the barn. But in the summertime, when the cows are out on pasture, she turns that barn into a venue, and she has all kinds of awesome events in there. And so coming up on Saturday, June 27th, we're going to have another Raw Milk Farm Food Freedom event where Dell will be, Sheriff Richard Mack will be, who won this really interesting Supreme Court case. This was back in 1997 when Bill Clinton was in office. And what was going on at that time was there was this gun control regulation called the Brady Bill that was going to force local sheriffs to enforce the federal statute. And if the sheriff didn't enforce the statute, the sheriff themselves would be jailed and fined for not enforcing these federal statutes. So Sheriff Mack and this other sheriff from Texas, Sheriff Prince, sued on the 10th Amendment. In the Supreme Court, I'm going to give kind of a quick nutshell ruling of it. They basically said that the federal government cannot regulate the states with regards to firearms. But in addition to that, that sheriffs, because they are oath takers, they are kind of the CLEO, C-L-E-O is the acronym. It stands for the Chief Law Enforcement Officer. They're kind of like the commander-in-chief of the county, and that they have constitutional discretion that if they feel a law is unconstitutional, they don't have to enforce it. So how this ties back into the raw milk movement is that a lot of local sheriffs have been using that kind of sheriff sovereignty to kick the state out of their county, to kick the federal government out of their county when the state or the FDA comes in to shut down raw milk farmers, which takes us back to the theme of the event at Churchtown Dairy. This is the third year we're having this event. This year, the theme is going to be suing the government.
That's a good theme.
So I got all this merch ordered. It didn't get here yet. I was going to wear it for the show right now if it came in. The I Sue the Government merch. And so we're going to have some I Sue the Government merch. We're going to have Dell to autograph some. Sheriff Mack will autograph some because he won that amazing case back in 1997. ICAN is just so many. I wouldn't even know. You probably have the number how many cases and records requests you guys have done in terms of suing the government. But that's the theme this year. We're going to have a little bit of a different lineup. Before we've had these round table. The first 2 years we had these round table events. Now what we're going to do, we're going to have more formal presentations. But before the presentations start, we're going to have a theatrical performance of The Germ in the Dairy Pail, which is this recent book that came out that talks about a lot of the fraud and the scandal in the raw milk movement that poses raw milk to be unsafe when really it's not. So we're going to have a theater group put on a presentation. This is live theater. It's going to be great, right? And then we're going to go into the conferences. And then my daughter, Jasmine Kane, who's actually an aerial circus performer, she is going to close the show with an aerial circus performance on the Lyra hoop and the aerial silk. We're going to hang them from the 40-foot ceiling, and she's going to perform there live to some very inspiring freedom music.
All right.
And then after that, we're going to have a band playing and have some social time. It's going to be an absolutely great event.
Excellent. Well, it sounds wonderful, and I want to say that book, Forrest Moretti, amazing author. I interviewed him for the polio documentary. He's just one of the incredible researchers of our time. We're very lucky to have him. So great to promote his work there because it's typically on target. Max, it's going to be a great event. I hope everyone that is in the area or close to that area goes to that. And keep up the great work. The raw milk fight is a fight for America. It's woven into the fabric of this country, and the farmers and the ranchers that really take care with what they give to the communities. Because if you're not making your communities healthy, really, what are you doing? Because you're part of those communities. So thank you for being a voice of reason, and we look forward to that event. Good luck.
Yeah, you're welcome, Jeffrey. And if anyone wants to get tickets, you can go to maxkane.com/events and you buy some tickets. And if you get a ticket, come up and say hello. I love to meet new people.
All right. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, take care, Jeffrey.
All right. Okay, so here we are. Now, I want to use that data center conversation we just had with Ed Dowd as kind of an example to what I'm going to do to close this show. So just about 2 or 3 months ago, looking through the headlines, maybe about up to a year ago, the data center and the artificial intelligence conversation seemed like a foregone conclusion. It was hopeless. Our jobs are going to be gone. Elon Musk told you, don't even bother to become a doctor. It's not going to matter anymore. don't bother to take part in civil society. AI's got it. You have no choice. You must assimilate. Well, the story that was just told and the headlines and the conversation with Ed Dowd told a different story. It told a story of artificial intelligence data center billionaires that are having problems now. They're having problems finding capital. They're having problems finding transformers and copper and raw materials to build these data centers. And there's a story of rural towns and cities that are standing up and saying, we don't want this. We don't want these data centers on our land, on our farmland. We don't want you to take our energy. We don't want you to take our water. So what happens when you see the story behind the story? That's what we do here. There's always a deeper story behind the headline. In today's day and age, headlines are pushed through with fear, with trauma, with algorithms for sensations. And I'm sure a lot of you, either individually or through your family, have experienced this stress from headlines, looking at it and saying, I got to get off social media. My life is so much better when I get off social media. So that's not what we do here. We don't push stress. We don't push fear. We push truth and accuracy. And we tell the whole story so you can accurately make decisions for yourself and your family and your community moving forward, because these are crazy times. There's crazy stories everywhere you look. So I want to ask a favor. If you have a family member that's freaking out, that doesn't watch the news anymore because it's so crazy, but wants to know what's going on, wants to make some decisions, wants to understand the life they're living, tell them to tune in next week or share a clip with them on a topic that's relevant to them to see if they can accept what we're reporting, how we're reporting it, with the truth, the facts, and accuracy. And maybe they might just chill out a little bit. Maybe they might make some decisions with a cool head, with a calm nervous system. This is my ask for you. This is your homework. And so I hope to see you next week. I'll be here. Del will be right back at this desk, and it's business as usual. So I'm Jeffery Jaxen, signing off from the High Wire. Thank you for being with us today. We'll see you next week.